Randy, we got a problem.
What? They go.
Reality's here. He's trying to crash the party. Reality? Who let him in?
You're sad that people are mean? Well, I'm sorry. The world isn't one big liberal arts college campus.
I don't have an agenda like I want people to do something. I need them to do something. I want them to avoid irrationality.
I guess what interests me is just like what interests everybody else. It's just sort of what feels real.
That was totally wicked!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of Real News. We are right on time this morning at 9:01. I got the slick back hair and everything. Just put the brush through it, did the washing thing. I'm a clean man as usual. It's August 11th, 9:01 in the morning. Welcome back to Real News, another edition, another installment. Unified chat over here, Facebook stream right here so I can see if I'm looking ridiculous yet again this morning. Unified chat, meaning regardless of where you're watching us from, be it on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook. I don't know if you're doing Facebook gaming. I don't know where else we're streaming from. Shine knows all these things in the back end. I know we just posted on Minds and Parlor and a few other places as well. But hey, if you comment out there, I will see it. Speaking of, Kelly already commented in YouTube over here saying, good morning, Real News family. She's making that YouTube switch for us. I got this little hair right here that's giving me a little alfalfa thing. There we go. We got it taken care of. What's going on, everybody? My name is Mr. Henry. Welcome to Real News. If you have just joined us, I noticed, Sean, we've been picking up a few new people from the Minds account in particular. Just want to let everyone know what Real News is about if you join us for the very first time, all right? So Sean and I started this endeavor along with a whole slew of other folks, all the way back from Roz to Richard, Mickey, Nathan, all the old school folks. People I'm probably forgetting as well. But we started this little endeavor initially with the idea of, it was 3 or 4 years back. It was just a time where it was hard to even have dialogue with one another. You were losing reference points. You couldn't really figure out what was up, what was down, what was left, right, diagonal, any of it, right? So we started this whole program wanting to create a situation by which a community where we could have calm, cordial exchange and dialogue with those that we disagree with, right? Fast forward a couple years later, Shine and I end up coming to work for Americans for Prosperity. Shine's doing big things in Knoxville, and he adds to the back end of that mission statement, that motto, something to the effect of, so that when we do have disagreements, it's disagreements amongst friends and neighbors, not enemies. Vitally important, especially for some of the topics we're covering today. And I do that motto introduction again, just as we're setting up greatest audience in the nation appreciation, something we do at the beginning of every single program right now. We just reach out to y'all and we say, hey, how are y'all doing? What are you struggling with? Where are you at in life? What philosophy are you into right now? What books are you reading right now? What novels are you going through? What articles are grabbing your what headlines are grabbing your attention, so to speak, right? Eric says, slick like Dracula. Hey, man, don't mess around. You know what I mean? Wife's from Romania. I got direct access. Anyways. What are you struggling with right now? How's stuff going in your life? Do you need prayer concerns for anything? You need just a hot meal made, someone dropping on your doorstep. We can try and coordinate some stuff. Community, growing, loving with each other. That's why we do what we do. We love and appreciate the shares and the likes and all that stuff. It really helps tweak the algorithm. But for us, it's much, much more than anything else. It's only about building this community so that we can do that mission statement, that motto, so we can grow with each one another, hold each other accountable, genuinely progress as a human species. Hey, as you guys are throwing out there, how you doing this morning? Greatest Audience in the Nation appreciation segment. Shine, buddy. How you doing over East Tennessee way, man? Everything looking good. I'm loving that new hat, by the way. It's not really a new hat, but you're wearing it, man. You're wearing it well.
It's not new, but I am wearing it. That's it, man. I got my coffee. I was just sharing this on Twitter and Parlor and all those things. But thank you for joining us, everyone. Hope you're having an excellent day, and we're gonna have a good week. We're already moving through it. It's Tuesday. There were shots fired near the White House yesterday.
Right?
That was weird. We were streaming last night. I was streaming because I thought President Trump was gonna like do something else cool, like the payroll tax cut. I'm like, what else cool is going to happen? Are we going to like leave Germany tomorrow? Or, you know, like, I don't know. Are we going to like go to Mars tomorrow? You know, like you never know what Trump's going to say anymore. So I was streaming it and all of a sudden the Secret Service took him off like right in the middle of our stream. It was wild. But good morning, everybody. I'm drinking coffee. I'm getting there.
Everybody is okay, by the way. They had they get updates afterwards. We got a clip from Trump talking about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about it here in a little bit.
Hey, let's see. Eric said prayers for these kids going back to school. These school kids going back to school. Actually, this is the story we're starting with this morning, Eric.
Prayers for these teachers who are all worried about it too.
Hey, Jessica just said in Facebook, back on her own account. What's up, Jessica? She was on her man's Kyle's account yesterday. It's such a cool story. Jessica yesterday was camping and suppose didn't have access to her normal account, so she hopped on her man's account to get on check out real news. That's community building right there. That's what I'm talking about. Hey, Jessica just said, local prison in my area is under investigation for inmate death. Oh, no. Case was closed until a few days ago. Someone released the security footage to Facebook. She says, I'm sick about it. I think they're saying I'm sick about it. That's terrible to hear. Man, that's terrible to hear. Hey, speaking of something else that's terrible to hear, we will keep an eye on that story. So a buddy of mine yesterday, before we get into the first story of the day, in this aspect of reaching out, helping community, all this stuff, I don't really know how far this show goes. I don't presume to think that it goes, all that far, frankly, but who knows? And who knows if people know people out in Memphis. But I'll say this much, right? I got a call from my buddy yesterday. Went to Bible college with this guy. He reaches out to me and says, hey, I have a close friend whose wife has went missing in the Memphis area for a little over a week now. And Sean, you'll see in the show notes there, I think Marlene, I think is her name, but you'll see right there on the local stories underneath the forgoodgovernment.com, there's something that says Memphis area fishermen needed for sonar search. I think that's the stage of this story that it's in, unfortunately. So this guy, his wife, they have 3 children there. You'll see them on the page. His wife has been missing for a little over a week. And like I said, my buddy Joel reached out to me yesterday and said, hey, this is one of my close friends. He's just can't find her out in the Memphis area. And I guess what they're doing right now is trying to find people with boats, fishermen that have, these advanced sort of sonar searches and just, trying to see if they can find anything at all. So he reached out and said, hey, I know you have at least a little bit of a reach. Do you know anybody in Memphis you can get this word to? And I said, Joel, I don't know, but I will absolutely give it a shot. I'll throw it out there. That's what we do, trying to build community and see if we can help people out or whatever. So this is what this guy's needing right now, trying to find his wife. I says, please help us rule out any possibility that her vehicle being submerged in the Mississippi River near Memphis, looking for boat owners with experience safely navigating this area in the river of Mud Island. Please sign up below. Search coordinator will reach out to you with more details. So look, y'all, it's a bit of a long shot, but if y'all know anybody in the Memphis area that has a boat that could fill this out, forward that information along to them, see if they can help out or whatever. Kelly just said that she heard about that. Did you really? My buddy Joel did tell me that it started making national news. It's the first I heard about it, honestly, but yeah, Kelly just put in Facebook. She said, I heard about that, praying for your friend. So there you go. Forward this around to some folks if you can. I'll throw in the real news link later on this afternoon too, if you guys know anybody that can help out in the Memphis area. Hey, moving on to local stories here as well, as we keep all these folks in our prayers and let us know anything concerns you have. Eric just brought it up a second ago saying, keeping people in mind for the students that are starting to go back to school. Here's the Tennessean headline, and you knew some of these headlines were going to start to come out. And I'm not even necessarily sure what to make of this yet. I'm just kind of setting the stage for the local stories. We're going to go from bad to good, back to bad again, sort of, and just sort of give people a stage where we're at. But here's the headline from Tennessee. More than 80 students quarantined in Tennessee County after exposure to COVID-19 at school. So more than 80 students at Putnam County are quarantined since the first week of classes after a student tested positive for COVID-19. Now, what's the best way to say this? The reporting gets a little bit strange here for me to follow at some point, and you'll be able to pick up on this with the verbiage that's being used. Is that a real word, verbiage? We'll pretend like it is right now.
Judges,
story goes on to say this.
Yes, verbiage. Yeah, it's real.
Sorry. Sounds like something you feed a rabbit, Anyways, a highly intelligent rabbit, at least. A student at a Cookeville High School has tested positive, the Associated Press reported, and others who were in close contact with the student have been told to quarantine for 14 days, according to mostly rural school district. Now here's the reporting that gets a little bit strange as far as I'm concerned, where it says an additional 7 teachers and staff and a bus driver are also at home due to a positive test or coming into close contact with someone who tested positive. That's a very convoluted way to put this information out there. I don't know out of that 7 teacher, staff, and a bus driver right now, was it 1 out of 7? Was it 6 out of 7? Was it all 7 that actually tested positive? And I don't know if that makes it any better or worse necessarily, if I can determine if it's 1 that tested positive and just 6 that came into close contact, or they're still trying to determine that because they all got tested and they're waiting for test results to come in. I guess all I'm really saying is in situations like this, the more information, the better. And that seems to be the theme going on with schools right now, at least as is in this story you're looking at. I mean, you'll see here in just a second. The theme essentially is we've had a lack of information. I'm speaking as parents here, or what's being reported on. The parents are basically saying, there's been an extreme lack of information so far. I need much more that I've been receiving recently. Story goes on to say many of the contact occurred outside of school or before the academic year began on August 3rd. This is what the district said. Quote, as educators, we believe that in-person learning is best. However, we are keenly aware that there will continue to be positive cases in our school and our community. This is the director of schools for Corbett County, or Corbett King, said in a news release. Going on to say, we will continue to strive to remain in person as much as prudent and feasible while protecting the health and safety of our students, faculty, and staff. Now, Putnam County Schools is just one of more than a dozen school districts already reporting confirmed COVID-19 cases since first schools reopening their doors to students less than 3 weeks ago. Apparently, more than a dozen school districts are already confirming outbreaks. The district announced last week that it plans to develop protocols to keep parents better informed of positive cases or close contact within the school system moving forward. Beginning Monday, the district will provide the following information on a daily basis, at least in this district's website. That quote, here's what they'll provide. The number of students at a particular school who currently have tested positive for COVID-19, the number of students at a particular school who are currently being quarantined due to being in close contact with those positive cases, and the number of faculty and staff at a particular school who are either positive or being quarantined due to positive contact. Now, at least 65 Tennessee school districts have reopened as of Friday, August 7th. The majority of them are offering in-person learning. Only 10 school districts intend to start the school year virtually. Now, that includes the 2 largest areas, Metro Nashville and Shelby County, or Memphis area, right? One of the main reasons why I bring this story up, one, I want to get the information to y'all if you haven't known already. And secondly, I don't have children, so it's a little bit difficult for me to get as invested with this topic as it is to some other topics. But for those of y'all that do have children, I'm genuinely interested to know where you're coming from in this. Tennesseans in particular. Those of you that are working in the school district possibly might have an opinion on this. Those that are having friends or family member that are have children in the school district. I don't have a lot of interaction with this hitting at home, as I'm sure it hits at home with a lot of y'all. I would like to know where you're coming from with this. Are you feeling as concerned as some of these reports are? Or what do you do with this type of information? I know a lot of our listening audience is basically, they've done the homeschooling thing for a very long time, so this doesn't affect them as much. But let me hit what Eric said in Facebook here, and then we'll go into some other of these local stories. Eric said, I'm on 2 different school district Facebook groups, and it's a big teachers versus parents fight over this stuff. And I've seen some comments that are a bit disturbing. One being they should fake infections to get schools shut down. Goodness gracious. Really? Wow. One being that they should fake infections to get schools shut down. Not sure how serious they were, but these days it's hard not to take the extremes seriously. Kelly said they were full of crap testing for coronavirus, not COVID-19. Literally everyone has had or will have coronavirus as part of the flu shot. Okay. Jonathan said Davidson County has had 3 straight days of COVID cases reduction. Well, all right, there you go. Matt said teachers' pensions are gone just like police. This is a cover story to shut it down. Seems like people are coming from all over the place here. Sean, I don't want to put you too much on the spot here, man, but have you heard anything from your mom or anybody else in the Oak Ridge School District possibly about what they're doing about this? Are they opening up at all?
I don't necessarily like talking about stuff that's not public or whatever that my mom's talked to me about or whatever. But I can tell you, I know a bunch of teachers, and I talk to my mom regularly, and they are stressed about the the school year. And I know that if you're a teacher and if anyone around you gets tested positive, they're not going to let you come to work for a long time. You know what I mean? There's going to be so many logistical issues for a lot of reasons, with like substitute teachers. What if kids miss like a certain amount of days? Because, like almost all school districts in almost all states have a rule that just with attendance, if you don't attend a certain amount, you fail. You know what I mean? You have you have to come to school and stuff like that. So there's all these rules that would have to be like taken off the books. And I've already, I don't know. It's like at least in this area, I know we've struggled to have normal amounts of substitute teachers. I don't know what we're going to do if you got teachers that are leaving school for like 6 weeks or 4 weeks or something like that while they're quarantined. How kids are going to get a quality education. Like, something that's weird to me is that the whole focus is only about let's try to keep parents, teachers, and students from getting COVID-19. And, like, no one's concerned at all that their kids may not get educated or, like, not ready for college or not ready for trade school or whatever. Like, and even on the broader, like, and I want to hear from Facebook, too, if anybody's in these Facebook groups. Is there a conversation coming from parents like, I really want my kids to be educated and I don't want them to get rubber stamped through these classes. I don't want it to just be like a participation trophy. I want there to be like real teaching and the opportunity to fail. You know what I mean? It's got to be hard too. It can't just be like, because I'm wondering too about the federal funding formula. Like if the schools don't provide lunch for kids who have the free lunch, that's a huge portion of school funding. Yeah. A huge portion. And they missed so many last year. That's the main reason that they compel kids to go to school, in my opinion, anyway. But there's all these things about the funding formula with attendance, with free lunch, and then substitute teacher logistics, whether or not the quality of the education is good if you've constantly got substitutes. Like, what if you have an AP chemistry class? Can that teacher leave for 4 weeks and still have a good semester with her kids?
How do you do some of that over virtual learning even, right?
Yeah, I think, and I'd love to hear from Facebook if anybody's in, like Eric said, he's part of these groups where parents and teachers are talking. Is there an emphasis on the quality of education? Because I've only heard emphasis on keep me from getting the cold and the flu and the COVID.
Eric just said in Facebook, Knox County is still shut down, Fairgate Primary, and I assume others won't start going back for 2 more weeks. So I have my son for that time, and we're doing schoolwork for a few hours a day. It's important to take the time to keep your kids educated, school or not. He says our kids are our responsibility. I mean, ultimately, that's, I think, what it falls down to quite a bit. I mean, I don't know, man. When was the Department of Education actually enacted? Was that 70 something? Right? I mean, our parents' generation seemed to be doing fine without some federal oversight. I don't know if that meant that the burden was more on the parents then than it was now, but it seems like it might have been. Let's see. Jessica said something slightly disheartening here. Kind of got me. Said, my district will not enforce masks or social distance for kids with intellectual disabilities. This is my daughter. We will homeschool her for now, saying bullying was a major issue before this. So they just made our choice for us, man. It's rough to hear. All these little sort of like tangential issues that come up that you don't really think of happening.
But this is what I've been wondering about this whole time is like, how are you going to have 1,000 kids in 1,000 person school and social distance? Like they barely fit anyway. Like so many schools have the trailers outside and stuff because like the building's not big enough. How do you social distance when kids didn't fit before? And that's the whole question of like, we've been living life in our own individual homes since May. And then we're trying to take the psychology and logistics of everybody being separated and then shoving it into regular public school function. And I just don't think that's possible. Like, how could you social distance unless everybody was in the gym or something? But even then, like when you have a school and you have a gym, it's like it's just big enough for all the kids in the school to fit in it, but that's the way schools are. You
And
know?
what was that? What was that story that just came up recently? Was it Georgia or somewhere? I'm actually trying to look at this right now, where it's exactly the situation that you just talked about, Shine, where there was video that was posted on social media accounts of. I mean, it's high school. It's high school. It was dozens upon dozens, if not hundreds of children walking the same hall. Not a single one of them wearing masks. And that was posted online. And the story came out that the school was trying to shut down all those accounts by basically saying, stop posting this stuff on your social media accounts.
They suspended a kid for posting.
Is that
them.
right?
Yeah. They suspended a kid but like kids get suspended for posting stuff on Facebook all the time. Like, I do know that.
Yeah.
I will say that.
Yeah.
Like, don't act like that's the weirdest thing ever. In fact, I'd say Snapchat, Facebook, those are the main reasons kids get suspended these days. Like, that's the number one reason you get suspended out of school. I do know that much from knowing teachers and administrators but the whole thing is like, man, these schools, things don't exist just because, right? They exist because people use them and maintain them and pay for them. I have to agree with that commenter from earlier of, like, how long will we have public school if we keep trying to, like, put this square peg in a round hole? Because whatever we do and get used to, we'll continue to do that. But you can't do regular school, and throw in the psychology of this corporate workplace or staying at home. It's kind of like, yeah, your kids might be in danger. The teachers might be in danger. When the kids come home, you might be in danger. You got to decide if you're willing to live with that or not. You got to decide, like, is your kid having an education more important than not getting COVID-19? It's kind of like you got to decide if you want to do it, it's not safe. It's like rock climbing or jumping out of a plane, but it's not that dangerous. But you get what I'm saying, right, Grant? It's like you got to decide there's a certain amount of danger you can live with and do it, or don't do it. But it's also why I think compelling kids to go to school is a bad law. I think that's a terrible, terrible law, and you shouldn't force people to have to send their kids to school. This is a great reason right here, Matt, because you're dealing with all these issues.
Matt just said on Facebook, by the way, if kids aren't there, they can't charge the state $16,000 per year per student. Some of this stuff is going to go into a conversation about what's happening at the university level here in just a second as well. Judy just said on Facebook, teachers here are very concerned about the quality of education. Lunches will be provided even on half days. Government money has always been tied to attendance. Will have to be waived. Eric just said, how about the kid who showed pics on the videos? Yeah, we just talked about that, right? Of actually getting suspended. And Jessica just said a second ago, luckily our kids get a snack to bring home on half days. And because of Corona, they were already informed that most days it will probably be a cold bagged lunch for them to eat in the classroom. Interesting. Michael said, interesting to ponder kids not at school and being taught that the 45 being interesting to ponder kids not at school and being taught the 45 goals of communism. Government now ruling they're hanging with friends, children, and church. Suicide numbers increasing due to depression. Wonder how many are starting to embrace conservatism. It's an interesting angle there, man. Honestly, without sort of the school system being what it is, if it has been a conservative critique that is turned into, and whether you agree with this critique or not, it's not necessarily the point of me saying this. It has always been, or at least the last couple of decades has been, that academia has been saturated with liberalism as opposed to conservatism. I think that's statistically borne out as well. Now, you could take that far enough if you want to, and to where Michael was just talking about and saying that it has become a slight sense of indoctrination program, meaning that you're only really being taught one worldview as opposed to another. And something like this, I don't know. It's just going to be interesting to see a few years down the road what this is going to do to that generation of children growing up without, say, that constantly being on top of them.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I was going to switch topics, buddy. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say we need this tort reform. Not tort reform. We need the liability protection for people not being allowed to sue against COVID, like, immediately. Because I guarantee you that's what these schools, municipalities, school systems, school boards, state departments of education, that's why the logistics are so tough, is the fear of our over-litigious society.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, man.
I think schools should be able, in this regard, just like businesses, to be free from any lawsuits and just say there's a certain amount of danger and you all need to live with it. Or teachers, if you don't like these rules, then quit. Go find a different job where you feel more safe. You know what I mean? But like we have a duty to educate these kids. And I'm only bringing this up because it feels like nobody has the emphasis on, well, we need to make sure these kids get educated. It's all about like making sure they don't get COVID. And I don't know why, like, it's not, because I feel like what's going to happen is you're going to have a whole generation of kids that are in high school during this time. And this year, and maybe even next year, Grant, because we don't know how long this is going to go. We have no idea. And there may be a COVID 25 or something like that coming up. I'm afraid these kids are going to get rubber stamped through high school. Like, they just take a few quizzes, they take a few tests, and then they get a diploma. You know what I mean? So
here's
everything,
your participation trophy in high
everything
school,
feels normal. Everything feels like we're getting the same quality as we were before. But I don't think that jumping through all the hoops that they're trying to jump through, that they're going to be able to give a quality education. I really doubt it.
Well, and we'll be bringing this topic up a little bit more, as we progress further into the school year. And I'll tell you right now, I'm totally open to conversation about this because I can't quite figure out where I'm falling on this yet. I mean, any time that education is taken back from the state and put in the hands of the parents, I know statistically speaking, that's usually the better answer. I mean, I can't tell you the number of education bills that Americans for Prosperity has worked on over this past session. And every single time, I'm talking invariably, the one factor that makes a difference across the board is the amount of involvement the parents have in those child's lives. And I'm telling you, this is statistically proven out on every single survey you've ever seen, every single study you've ever seen, every single blind study. It doesn't matter. Find a stat that includes that as a variable, and it's usually the distinctive variable that makes the most difference in a child's life. Now, this makes perfect sense in a commonsensical way. If a parent takes an interest in his child's life, then they will be more inclined to actually do after-school activities that is directed specifically to what a college is looking for in an application, because the parent would know what a college would look for in an application because they talk to people about that. It's just one example. But the frustration that government has, at least Republican-leaning or libertarian-leaning versions of government, I spoke to a representative, spent about 45 minutes to an hour and a half in his office, one of the first people we met with up here last session. He was talking to us specifically about this, and he was a statistician back in his days before he became a legislator. And he had this whole thing charted out. I mean, I'm talking study after study after study. And one of the things he was showing was exactly what I just said. If you can have a parent involved in the child's life, then the child will perform dramatically better every single time. But he said, the problem we run into as Republicans is I can't force that. There's no way I can incentivize that. There's nothing I can do with the strong arm of government unless I want to so drastically overreach into family life to make that action happen. That's where this disconnect, this frustration comes in is look, there's nothing that government can do. You can't throw money at that problem. You can throw all the money in the world that you want to it. And there's certain things you can do. We were, at Americans for Prosperity, one of the things we were trying to do was continually open up educational freedom of choice. If you don't know this, it's just a little aside as we switch into a different topic here nationally. One of the things that passed in Tennessee was something called an educational savings account. It's not a voucher. The term voucher gets thrown around quite a bit, but in Tennessee, as long as you live in Davidson or Shelby County, so Nashville or Memphis, call it that, there's anywhere from about $7,000 to $7,500 allotted per child to the school system. Now, some of that's federal dollars, some of that's state dollars. But the point being is child 1, child 2, child 3 each have about $7,000 to $7,500 attached to their head, okay? So one of the things that Americans for Prosperity worked on and was able to accomplish in passing last session, if you as a parent want to take that $7,500, again, just in Nashville or Memphis, if you want to take that $7,500 and spend it on private school, tuition, tutoring, saving for college, books for homeschool, whatever. If you want to spend that on something else for the educational purpose of your child that you think would be a better fit for your child, do it. Free to do so. It's actually one of the things we're working on to get people to sign up for this time around. Now, initially, that bill went through that was going to cover the entire state. And as things go, it gets whittled down and cut down. And it was actually meant to apply to Knoxville as well. But for the sake of a single legislator, it didn't. That's a totally different story. But I do think there's ways that you can make this situation a little bit better. Florida started doing this a few years back, that educational savings account, again, which is not a voucher. A voucher is a very specific allotment, a very specific allocation to be spent on a very specific thing, usually private schools, sometimes charter, whatever else, right? Florida started doing this ESA type program several years ago and saw a 25 to 30% increase in the STEM qualifiers over a couple year period. So I'm just saying that, there are ways that you can do this, but ultimately the government cannot incentivize a parent to be more involved in their child's life. And I'm not even sure what's going to happen at the university level here either. But frankly, I don't even know if this necessarily cares, man. This is something we can talk about all the time, is this college football thing. I just don't know what's going to happen at the university level, because most of this, unfortunately, even some at the state level with high school, revolves around money. And at the college level, a lot of this revolves around money as well. And for most of the time, the people I was speaking to were saying, look, we have a bubble situation going on in the NBA right now. They're still playing the NBA. They're still playing the NHL. They're still playing baseball to some extent. We'll see how long that goes. What's going to happen with football? Well, Big Ten came out yesterday and subsequently along with Big 12 and basically did all but fully confirm, which most are predicting they will confirm today, that the Big Ten and the Big 12 will not be playing any college football this season. Now, initially, it was set up as they were going to play just in-conference games. But now they're saying, no. And this is one high-ranking source said that from the Big Ten yesterday, said that, no, it's done. It's a done deal. It's set and over. They're expected to cancel the entirety of the 2020 college football season in a historic move. Now, the only reason why I thought that was interesting to bring up is just to tie the money angle on the back end of some of this stuff. Now, in Tennessee, with SEC football, this obviously has quite a bit to do about money. It has also a little bit to do about just returning to a state of normalcy. Trump tweeted yesterday to make this a national headline, quote, "play college football" with an exclamation point at the end. So Trump's weighed in here. He says, "play college football." And UT Chancellor tweeted this yesterday. The new UT Chancellor said, quote, "This afternoon, I met with our fellow football team and staff to have an open conversation about playing football this fall. At the end of our discussion, I asked if they wanted to play football, and the answer was a resounding yes." So I don't know what you do in the SEC if some want to play and some don't want to play. But a large portion of what's going into this is that it also comes at the same time that players across the nation are opting out of playing football because of concerns about how the virus could impact their short and long-term health. And 4 Michigan State players in particular, it's just one place they focus on. 4 Michigan State players said that they would not play in 2020. And one team source said that more players were expected to follow. So it seems like this sort of college player union is forming where they're just saying, like, I'm just not playing. I'm not getting paid to do this. Now, that's a little bit of a controversial statement because you know how I feel about not paying college football players. I think you should pay them, man. What does the SEC get? Like $500 million, $550 million a year?
I always say they have an amateur soccer league or professional amateur soccer league in Europe. Why don't we have a professional amateur league in the United States for football? I've always said
that's exactly what we're doing. We just don't call it that. Transitioning in some of our national topics here as we're at the bottom of the hour. Let me hit some of these Facebook comments. By the way, realnewsradio.live, realnewsradio.live. That's where you're going to find all the Real News related stuff. You get some swag out there. Find some links to the Real News YouTube pages, Facebook, Twitter, all that other stuff you want to follow along later. Jessica just said in Facebook, so she says basically the same thing that happens with a lot of difficult kids in low-income schools. Just push them on. Kelly said, homeschool your children, find a way. It's absolutely the best for your children, for your family, for their future. Get a community of parents, little co-op. There's a lot of co-ops in Tennessee too. Make a way. Jessica said, yes, I've been trying to talk to my mom friends about this. Small community family help is safer than giant school. I think most of my nieces and nephew are co-ops school. Jessica just said mic drop. And then Kelly put a link in there for classical conversations. And look, as all this stuff is going on, John, if you could pull up that very first our story over there, Prayer and Salvation in Restless Streets. I just want to give you all a sense real quick that as these stories are going on that you're hearing of, you know, tragedies going on in school. We talked this morning about somebody losing his wife or at least missing wife. We're hearing reports all the time. And I mean, most of the latter half of this show is about to be whether reality is coming back because liberal outlets are now reporting on the truth that is arguably harmful to their narrative, the truth of the violence that's happening in these streets right now. Now, I believe there's a purpose behind why they've switched the narrative. I'll get to that in a second. Suffice to say, the only thing that's going on with any real sense of consistency is that we're always on the edge of tragedy. Like we're on the precipice of some type of catastrophe at all times. I mean, this anxiety, it's almost baked into coverage now. I mean, we fall victim to it quite often here. But I wanted to bring up this story real quick just to show you. This is a guy that I went to Bible college with. He's been doing some legit stuff on the streets of Louisville. This guy, Jason Reynolds here. I'll let you play that video in just a second, Sean. This guy, Jason Reynolds, he's always been this kind of guy that goes to the streets to find where it's happening. Yeah, actually, go ahead and play that video, man. There's some audio in there. I'd want them here too. Go ahead and play that, and we'll pick it up. Sorry, man. I keep doing this, Sean. Just keep in your mind while we're playing this video that these are the types of stories that are not being reported on. That's the point of me bringing up. This type of stuff, this type of love and compassion and outreach. Now, yes, granted, it's in the vein of Christianity, but this type of stuff is happening all over the place, Christianity or otherwise. Human beings are loving on human beings in a genuinely compassionate way, more than I have seen in a very long time. And this stuff is just not getting reported on. So keep hope, keep optimism is what I'm saying. In spite of all the tragedy, trash that's shoved in your face, just keep this in back of your mind that these are the real stories that are happening on the streets. Go ahead and play that, buddy.
Father God, I just want to thank you for my brother, God. Thank you, God. This man right here, you've been chosen to lead, God. And I pray in Jesus' name, God, you just bless him, you protect him, you guide him, God. Give him the words to say, supernatural protection, and no bullet gonna touch him today, God. And no corona gonna touch him, God. And you're gonna bless him and take him to the destiny you've chosen to lead his people, God. And you bless him and you protect him in Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Woo! Amen.
God is for fighting for injustice, man. That's one thing that people don't realize, man. If you're a believer, it says fight for those who are oppressed, man. Stand up for that, man. And so that's what God's all about.
Showing other people who you are, Lord, let it be through talking to them, Lord, their actions in their everyday life. Just pray that you guide them and protect them, Lord. Remind them every day that them, Lord, even when they feel like you're far away, Lord, and I just pray that you just keep you know, it even says in the Bible, let your gentleness be known to all men, to all women, to every person that's out there. You know, so like for the both of us, it's like we're just gonna keep doing and let others see. And if someone's interested,
we're not battling the police, we're not battling the myself, we're battling the good person. That is the masterpiece. And love our neighbor, man. Love our enemy, love everybody, dude. That's why we're out.
just trying to, spread positivity out here. All the hate and the anger, there's always good that can come out of even the worst situation. And, my brother Jason and I, we're just out here just wanting to show the light of, not just from our hearts, but what our Lord Jesus Christ wants us to do, just like we do this as vessels for other people around us, trying to make a difference.
Look, I know a lot of people that watch this program, they don't consider themselves Christian. They may not even consider themselves religious. All right, they may even be straight up atheists. It doesn't initially matter. The point of showing the video, where Shine and I come from in this, right? You understand our worldview. You know why we do what we do. You understand that particular worldview of being a servant first, of a servant mentality, of serving others, of sacrificing things that are most important to you, of picking up, as they say, your cross daily so that you can carry a message of compassion and hope and dignity to someone else. That's why Shine and I got involved in politics. That's what leads our politics, is that type of worldview. And what I'm saying is you don't have to follow our religious stance to understand that type of stuff is desperately needed right now. And this type of stuff is the stuff that you are not seeing reported on. That stuff is that's just one dude in Louisville. That type of stuff is happening all over the place. And I wanted to bring that story up just to preface some of the stuff that we're about to jump into right now for two different reasons. One, to set the stage that's saying that, look, man, it's not as bad as what I'm about to report. And two, I don't know, man, maybe some of this happening is the reason objective truth rising to the top is inability to squelch that out. There is no way you can suffocate truth. It just will always rise to the top. People are desperate for unity again. They're desperate for direction. They're desperate for cause and purpose. They want to be a part of that solution. That is why people are literally out in the streets right now. For the most part, most of them are out in the streets right now because they are desperate for some type of unification, and they want to be a part of that solution. They want to feel purposeful. And I'm wondering now, some of these liberal outlets that are reporting some of this stuff, if reality is coming back, because this type of story is rising to the top more and more and more. And I want to know what's really going on. Democrat leadership and media outlets are starting to realize that I think to some extent you can't really contain the violent story that's going on anymore. And I don't necessarily care if you want to say it's Antifa or Black Lives Matter or who it is. It doesn't matter. To me, it doesn't matter. There's no end to the violence that some of these organizations will demand. And I don't care, again, if it's Boogaloo on the right or if it's it doesn't matter. Democrat leadership and media outlets are starting to realize, I think that there's two things that are going to start to happen here. Either they have to shift strategy or they have to take ownership of this violence. And nobody wants to take ownership of the violence. As that video just indicated right there, part of the reason why I thought it was such a great video to play is because you have these two guys that are praying over three entirely different entities there, right? You have what looks to be a Black Lives Matter supporter. And then a second one, it looks to be, some type of individuals in Louisville. Remember that day in Louisville where you had folks show up from what looked to be like a 3%ers or something to those folks? It was people were showing up in military garbs with long rifles, but clearly not affiliated with police. They didn't have any type of police badging on. And then the last one, it was them praying for police officers. So you get like all three sects there of them praying for people. And what they're trying to do is just cut through that minutia. I think everybody wants to see this return. And you have this reporting that we just touched on from CNN yesterday. Portland police declare a riot after people tried to start fire at a police office. CNN never would have reported on this. Maybe people are just fed up with dealing with it. Maybe people are just fed up with not positing a solution. Anger can only take you so far before all that it's ever really going to do is just give you a reaction of just more and more anger. This is what CNN said. Police said protests happening here in Portland, and Saturday night in Portland, which have taken place nightly in Oregon for more than 2 months, started peacefully at 10:30. They started peacefully at 10:30, and then at some point, the group just made a beeline to a different area and just specifically sought out this police precinct to just light on fire. Shortly after protesters broke into the window of the office and started a fire, police said security video from the inside of the office shows unidentified people tossing flaming debris into the office to grow the flames. I don't know. No one's supporting this type of movement. This isn't unification. This doesn't get us anywhere. The story goes on to say that when officers arrived to disperse the crowd, protesters threw glass bottles and paint balloons at them. They pointed laser pointers at their eyes. And again, hear this paragraph right here. Now towards the bottom of the story. Quote, this is Portland police. Portland police are saying this. This is CNN reporting the Portland police are saying this, quote, while officers were moving rioters, they came upon areas of the street where rioters built barricades with street closure signs, picnic tables, and other types of material. Rioters on the other side of this barricade were hurling objects at the officers. At that point, officers were able to get around the barricade and continue to push the rioters away from the closure. About 300 rioters gathered in Kenton Park. That's CNN. CNN reporting that it was the police in Portland police. Why do I keep saying that? Because the narrative up until now, literally up until this past weekend, has been that it's Trump's fault. It's the federal jackboot troops. It's the stormtroopers that are moving in. I mean, all the rhetoric that you've heard thrown out there. As long as you remove the federal troops, we've been told the problem will take care of itself. But the problem has not taken care of itself. And now CNN is doing a 180 shift within a 48-hour period, seemingly now saying, well, here's what the Portland police are saying. So I guess it is a problem. It's not just CNN. Sean, check out that next clip here. It's right underneath that Portland story. Portland mayor, YouTube clip. Portland mayor says that rioters, if you're burning down buildings with people inside of it, it's attempted murder. The Portland mayor says this. Let me know when you get that clip ready, man, because it's important, I think, to hear him directly from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Yeah, just start that at the beginning. Go ahead.
Week of violence. Portland seeing yet another week of violence. The city's mayor condemning rioters for trying to set fire to a police precinct and blocking the exits while cops were still inside. Take a look.
When you commit arson with an accelerant in an attempt to burn down a building that is occupied by people that you have intentionally trapped inside, you are not demonstrating. You are attempting to commit murder.
Dana, you're a communications expert.
You can stop it right there, buddy. That you heard the Portland mayor say it himself. When you attempt to burn down a building with people inside of it, that is attempted murder. So here's two cases we have now of I don't know what to call this. It's not exactly hypocrisy.
But it's so hard to take this seriously. It's so hard to take him seriously because, like, he participated in a riot where they tried to burn down the federal courthouse. Right? He participated. And, like, they were trying to burn down a federal courthouse for almost 70 days. It's murder now. Oh, right. Oh, okay. Now that he's liable.
Well, that's what it is, yeah.
Now that he's liable, it's murder.
He's liable, right.
Yeah, it's beyond hypocrisy. It's like mental illness is what it is.
Well, and you start to see some of the shift in strategy all across the board here. This is slightly unrelated, but it's related in a different way. Eric just said in Facebook a second ago here, saying, did Kamala Harris stop following Biden on Twitter? That's what I'm hearing. And that's a big move, if true, speaking of strategy. Norm just said in Facebook, let's see here. Let's talk about the public school thing. I'll back that comment in just a second, Norm. But Eric said, did Kamala Harris stop following Biden on Twitter? Some of the strategy here, obviously, is that Biden is trying to choose his vice presidential candidate. And I believe the strategy behind his vice presidential candidate is that most people are understanding if you're voting, and this statement I'm about to make is a very true statement. It's going to, I don't think it's going to upset anybody, but I don't know. It is what it is. If you're voting for Biden, you're voting for the VP. That's 100% what's going on. And nobody's hiding that ball. I don't think Biden's hiding that ball. Nobody's voting for the Joe Biden ticket for Joe Biden. They are voting for the Joe Biden ticket because of who he's going to pick for VP. Because
Joe Biden says, vote for me. I have the ball.
I mean, Joe Biden made this Freudian slip back the other day. He said, I'm going to choose the vice presidential candidate that's ready to be president on day one. It was his Freudian slip, and in some sense, I think he was being slightly truthful about that too, because whether it's some sense, I don't know what the incapacitation might be, whether it's just where he is right now, whether it's lack of energy or what it might be. But much as a Cheney is to Bush, I think some people are going to be thinking that it's likely that whoever is in that alternate position is going to be pulling some of the shots there. You know what I'm saying? So look, we got CNN, we got Portland, we have the Biden team all switching strategies a little bit. And Kamala Harris, I think, has been told to stay away a little bit because Kamala Harris doesn't exactly have a great track record of when she was a prosecutor. It's not going to look that good if you have the architect of civil asset forfeiture and someone who just put a lot of people in jail for minor offenses of, say, marijuana possession. Now you have a New York Times story as well. This is number 4 in the chain of people switching narratives in the last 48 hours. I think I'm building a pretty decent case here. New York Times article. Abolish the police, ? Those who survived the chaos in Seattle aren't so sure. This article starts out by saying, what's it like when a city abandons a neighborhood and the police vanish? Business owners describe a harrowing experience of calling for help and being left all alone. Fazil Khan was being told that by news media, his own mayor that the protesters in his hometown were peaceful and that it was, quote, a block party atmosphere. But that was not what he saw through his window of his Seattle coffee shop. He saw encampments overtaping the sidewalks. He saw roving bands of masked protesters smashing windows and looting. Young white men. This is a new alternative narrative you're hearing showing up as well, that this entire movement is being commandeered by young white men. And Eric, buddy, help me out in the comments section. That book that you keep telling me, Communism, Color, and something or another. Tell me that book one more time, Eric. He knows what I'm talking about. We talked about it when we hung out that weekend where we were getting signatures for the Nashville Taxpayer Protection Act. Some of the new narrative that's starting being pushed here is that it's young white men that are starting to get marginalized minorities as cannon fodder is the term that's being used, to sort of take the brunt in of the Republican sword, if you will, while they're trying to push an alternate narrative. They convince some of these other individuals to take the fire for them so they can operate in the background. Going forward, Mr. Khan, he's a homosexual individual from Middle Eastern descent who moved here from Texas, moved to Portland from Texas, moved to Seattle from Texas so he could feel more comfortable about being out. To get into his coffee shop, he sometimes had to seek the permission of self-appointed armed guards to cross a border that they had erected. You see how counterintuitive some of this stuff can become? A Middle Eastern guy who fled Texas so he could feel more comfortable in his own skin. And now he's having to talk to these self-appointed guards just to get into his own shop that he owns. Here's what he said. He said, quote, "They barricaded all of us in here." Again, keep in mind, we're talking about the Chaz Chop area. The area that was meant to be pitched as a block party atmosphere. This is a business owner that said this is what he had to deal with. He said they barricaded all of us in. And quote, "They were sitting in lawn chairs with guns." For 23 days in June, about 6 blocks in the city capital, Capitol Hill neighborhood, were claimed by left-wing demonstrators, declared police free. Protesters hailed it as liberation from police oppression and white supremacy, and a catalyst for a national movement. Now, jumping forward a little bit more here, we hear, let's see what the story is saying, that on Capitol Hill, businesses crashed as the Seattle police refused to respond to calls in the area. These are accounts coming from small business owners. This is what this article is about. It's a very long article. I would highly recommend you go read this entire thing. This individual went to go interview a bunch of small business owners that were in the Chaz Chop area, and this is what she's responding to, saying, "My stuff was getting broken, y'all. My property was destroyed. I couldn't get into my business, and I called the police, and they told me, I don't know what to tell you. What do you want us to do?" That's an actual quote. That is an actual quote. I believe from New York City or possibly from Seattle, but I heard this story the other day. I think Tim Pool was reporting on this story, saying that someone called a business owner and said, "Hey, such and such is happening. Can I get some help?" And the police officer responded, but the person on the other end, and obviously an officer, but the dispatch officer said, "What do you want us to do about it? What am I to do about this?" Now, this article is saying now a group of local business owners, including a locksmith, the owner of a tattoo parlor, a mechanic, the owners of a Mexican restaurant, and Mr. Khan, they're all suing the city. The lawsuit claims that Seattle's unprecedented decision to abandon and close off an entire city neighborhood, leaving it unchecked by police, unserved by fire and emergency departments and health departments, and inaccessible to the public, resulted in enormous property damage and lost revenue. This is another narrative you're starting to pick up on. From the very beginning, it's always been, you're more concerned about property damage than you are about human life. I don't know what to do with someone that's that disingenuous about what's happening right now. I just don't know how to handle you. It's not even a false equivalency. It's being willfully misleading.
Yeah, like people who are alive don't use that property to maintain their life. You know? Like this guy who owns a business. He doesn't own that business for fun. Like, just for fun anyway. He does it so he can, like, pay his rent and eat. You know? That's his life.
So the property damage that's going on in Chicago, that's one of the other stories that I have linked down here in just a second. So over let's just jump to this, just to add this all in. I'll go back to some of the comments here. So in the show notes, Shine, jump down a little bit here from that story we just... The show notes, there's a red section from some Twitter links. I'll get to this in a second. But go down to where it says hundreds of people smashed windows, stole from stores, and clashed with police overnight. There's a Twitter link right there. It's got a little video of what happened in Chicago Monday night. Now, if you haven't heard about this, and I don't know I don't know necessarily what to do about this story anymore because it's just people taking ownership, local leadership. This is the reason why I'm bringing this stuff up. This is now story 5. So we're on story 5. This is the case I'm building. We're now on story 5 of the narrative changing that 1, violence apparently is bad, and 2, Democrat leadership taking they're not just taking ownership of it now anymore. They're trying to do something about it because they realize like it's unsustainable. There is no good that's coming from a lot of this. There's no purpose really behind it anymore. The only real purpose that's identifiable for a lot of people is just the purpose of destruction, dismantling the current system, which nobody's buying into. Here's the account that happened in Chicago. Hundreds of people descended on downtown Chicago early morning following a police shooting on the city's south side. Now already that sentence is, we got to break some of that down, but follow along. Vandals smashing windows of dozens of businesses, making off with merchandise, cash machines, anything else they could carry. Seattle again last night. Jump to Seattle. We're in Chicago right now, but jump to Seattle. Seattle last night, Antifa members broke into a Chase bank. So now we're literally to the point of vandalizing, but now we're breaking into banks. They are. Back to Chicago. Police Superintendent David Brown told reporters that the Sunday afternoon shooting of the man who had opened fire on officers. Okay, all right, pause for a second. Here we go. So what happened in Chicago? It's looking like. Let me read that first sentence again. Quote, this is the story that's linked in the Twitter notes there. That ABC headline, hundreds of people descended on downtown Chicago early Monday following a police shooting on the city's south side. So you're getting this sensation that what happened is the police shot somebody and there was a revolt, slight riot, some demonstrations in the street that were going on. What actually ended up happening is the police ended up shooting a 20-year-old individual that fired upon them first. But Facebook reported it as police killing a 15-year-old individual. Now, nobody's dead. Nobody died, by the way, if that small detail even matters to some people. Here's what actually happened. Apparently, this social media post that I just talked about urged people to form a car caravan and converge on businesses and shopping districts. They were literally running cars through the front of windows here. I'm not lying. Further ratcheting up the tensions in the city was a video circulating on Facebook that falsely claimed that the Chicago police had shot and killed a 15-year-old boy. Posted at 6:30 p.m. Sunday, the video shows upset residents confronting officers near the scene where police shot and wounded an adult suspect they say had fired on them that day. By Monday morning, the footage had been watched by nearly 100,000 people, or at least 100,000 times. Now, I'm leaving that pregnant pause in there to show you all the difference in 48 hours. Remember, this is number 5, the 5th case that I'm throwing out here for the massive switch transition that liberal media has done on covering these stories. That paragraph that I just read there, never would have heard about it a month ago. That paragraph of falsely identifying a 15-year-old child, when in actuality, here's the real story. Latrell Allen was a 20-year-old who was charged with attempted murder on Monday for firing at officers. Officers returned fire, wounding the man, not killing anybody. He was taken to hospital for treatment. He was suspected to recover. The police chief said that this guy that they did arrest had a long criminal history, including arrests for domestic battery and child endangerment. Now, I hate to put all this at the feet of mainstream media, but I'm gonna. These 2 paragraphs you just simply would not have heard reported a mere week ago. If there is rioting and demonstrations in the street that leads to destruction, the last thing you want to do as ABC is lend some type of evidence to the idea that those riots are unjustified. That is the last thing you want to do. And the best thing you could possibly do to maintain any stitch of journalistic integrity would be just to not report on it at all. You certainly couldn't falsely report on it. You couldn't just say that it didn't happen. You couldn't say that the police did kill a 15-year-old boy. You'd have to issue retractions. That'd be too much. The tact that has been taken recently is that media outlets just won't report any of this stuff. Now, this is number 5 in a string. CNN, New York Times, the mayor of Portland, Kamala Harris. Things that's happened. Misinformation, I don't know. It doesn't matter. But now ABC is telling me that they're just busting windows out everywhere, man. And it was all because of a misreported story of what actually ended up being a 20-year-old that fired upon officers and nobody died. Again, keep in mind, it's not necessarily about this story in particular. It's about the overall narrative of what I think is going on here. Now, just to cap all this out, I forgot to throw this in the show notes, but promise you that it's here. The Chicago mayor, Mayor Lightfoot, she went on and said, agreed. Her quote's down there at the bottom of the show notes, saying, this was straight up felony criminal conduct, she said. This was an assault on our city, she said. Democrats are switching and spinning this narrative now. They're realizing that constantly trying to defend or at least silence looking like a form of submission to some of this violence going on is an unsustainable route to take. You just can't do it and hope to still garner any sense of political capital that you can cash in on later in November. It's just not going to happen. People are not cool with this stuff. They're just not going to be down with this stuff happening all the time. And lastly, Sean, to finish this entire rant out here, let me show you the shift that we've had. That last video there, Sean, if you can pull that up. It's a YouTube video that says Ted Cruz asks Hirono to say one negative thing about Antifa. Pull that clip up if you could. Started right at 2:08. It should be linked already to minute 2:08. Let me know when that's good to go. Because what you're about to hear, this exchange between Ted Cruz and the other senator, this exchange happened just a week or two ago. Just a week or two ago.
We're good.
And just a week or two ago, you heard Democrats that they couldn't say anything bad about Antifa. They couldn't say anything bad about this violence going on right now. There was just no way to own it. And now it's this coordinated strategy to everybody, all of them. This is case number 6 now, right? All 6 cases that are presented this morning to shift on a dime. And now I'll say, no, hold on. It's always been bad. It's always been bad. So that way, when it starts to quell back down around November, someone can say like, hey, man, look, I told you Democrat leadership knows what they're doing. Go ahead and play that from minute 2:08 there, Sean. This is what I'm talking about.
So all I can say is, look, we should all join hands and denouncing and whatever words you want to use about violent extremism of all stripes. And I think we can all agree on that. So to constantly accuse Democrats of not caring about that is really, I can only say that you aren't listening. So I hope this is the end of this hearing, Mr. Chairman, and that we don't have to listen to any more of your rhetorical speeches. Thank you very much. I'm leaving.
Well, I appreciate the, as always, kind and uplifting words of Senator Hirono. And I would also note that throughout her remarks, she still did not say a negative word about Antifa, nor has any Democrat here. They instead engage in a political game where they depend. You're welcome to say something negative about Antifa right now.
I think that I've covered the subject quite well. You are not listening.
Okay, she declined to speak, so that is the position of the Democratic Party. I would note also that of the 7 Democratic senators who spoke, not a one of them apologized for or denounced multiple Democrats calling law enforcement officers Nazis, stormtroopers, and Gestapo, to be fair. I have not heard the word Nazi, but stormtrooper was Nancy Pelosi and Gestapo was another Democratic leader. That is less than helpful. I thank each of the witnesses for your testimony. I thank you for defending free speech.
So, I think that argument that Ted Cruz just put forward, it's one that Trump's been pushing, it's one Republicans have been pushing, and I don't know. I think it started to work. Now, here's the main problem, though. Here's, I think, what nobody is really looking out for. It still doesn't do anything to satiate the concerns of those groups, the mob mentality that have been pushing this stuff to begin with. Because what ends up happening is if you use the mob to further your own desires, at some point you owe the mob because the mob owns you. I'll say that again. At some point you owe the mob because the mob owns you. Now you can't just pull back. Regardless of the fact of what Ted Cruz was pushing there a second ago, that was working. It was an extremely difficult thing for Democrats to overcome because people were seeing on a nightly basis. In Portland, people were seeing we're 70 plus days in now. stuff being lit on fire and canisters of tear gas being thrown around and people getting punched, and it doesn't matter, just general destruction. A lot of people didn't care which side it was coming from. A lot of people didn't care if it was coming from police or protesters. It doesn't matter. They just saw destruction upon destruction. And they knew that Republicans were saying violence is wrong, and they knew that Democrats were saying, well, I can't really say violence is wrong. Violence might be justified. And that's the thing, is I hate to sound crass here and cold and slightly callous, but a large block of the voting populace in America is not informed enough to look past just that surface level, right? That's how Ted Cruz is calling people on it, and Democrats couldn't pick back up. They no retort. But now that you're seeing the 6 or 7 cases that I presented this morning of CNN, of New York Times, forget the media outlets. What are these politicians going to do? What is Mayor Lightfoot going to do? What is Senator Hirono going to do? Let's really go to it. Let's really hit where it's at. What is that mayor of Seattle going to do? The guy who comes out and says, the mayor of Portland even. Portland mayor, what?
The mayor of Portland's kind of a microcosm, where one week he came out and said, I'm with you, and then got booed out of the crowd, and then he got tear gassed. Like, while he's talking to them, they're holding up a sign that says, like, Mayor, you need to quit, or reject, I forget his name, the mayor of Portland. But they were holding up a sign that was like anti-mayor sign while he's saying, I'm with you, I'm fighting for you, I'm on your team. And then like a week later, he says that he can negotiate on behalf of the protesters or the rioters. Mm-hmm. And it's like, we don't believe you. We know they don't like you. Like, why are you acting like you're on their team? They don't like you. They're so far past you and what you think government should be. They're burning down buildings. Do you burn down buildings, Mayor, whatever, from Portland? Are you a hardcore? No, you're not. You're not. And that's what's so funny about this whole thing. They've done everything they could do to try to take advantage of this situation. And they being the Democratic Party. From the municipal level all the way up to senator level. And by trying to take advantage of it for political gain, they've enabled some very bad things to happen. And now they're trying to walk that double line of, I'm with you, but you need to stop. Mostly because this isn't giving me an advantage anymore. That's what the Democrats are saying. Exactly. You need to stop because this is not giving us an advantage anymore. And that's, it should show everyone how, I don't know the right word. Hypocrite's not the right word. Feckless isn't the right word. How much they're liars and how much they're not. And I'm not all Democrats, right? Because Republicans are bad too. Everybody's pretty bad. But these people are willing to say, like, I'm for this moral cause. That's not really that moral. They'll do anything to get elected. They'll do anything to maintain power, even encouraging a bunch of people to commit acts of violence and acts of destruction, and then act like they didn't do that, and act like always acting like they're the adults in the room. And it's been very disturbing to watch, and they will not pay politically for it. They won't.
That's why I started this whole thing with that video that I showed. Let me hit these Facebook comments real quick, and then I'll end the show with this little thought. But Norm said in Facebook, order goes hand in hand with upholding laws. Remove one to prepare to concede the other. Law and order only exist together. Eric said, imagine the response if Trump wins again. Well, it's a little bit what I was going to, right? Norm said, at least the mob is consistent and true. No justice is certainly leading to no peace. Well, yeah. Norm said, sounds like Benghazi, not Chicago. Eric said, we are listening and watching. There are villains and good people in both parties, but where the violence and chaos is the worst, those leaders are Democrats, and they are complicit in the madness we see. That is statistically accurate as well. Most of this violence is happening in Democrat-controlled areas. And Matt said, going to get Duarte soon. Look, that's why I started this whole little rant of breaking down the liberal shift. It's exactly what Sean just said. If it's not advantageous to their cause, then they'll shirk you off. If it's not advantageous to what they're trying to push or garner votes or anything else, once it starts to become a disadvantage, They'll have nothing to do with you anymore. And this is the start of that shift. So start to recognize some of this. This will be the narrative going forward for the next couple of months. Now, all of a sudden, violence is bad, that you do want to disassociate yourself with those people and distance yourself from those kinds of organizations. But I just don't think that some folks are ready for that yet. And what I mean by not ready for that is like they haven't properly planned for the monster that they've created, the beast that is this type of revolt, reaction. And I think it's getting problematic on both sides. So and you're starting to hear this yourself, you're starting to read articles, okay? As one side is pitching what looks very similar to communism, the retort then ends up becoming, but you guys are reacting with fascism. Now, the intricacies of the details of those definitions become intertwined, and it's a hard thing to parse out, and it doesn't necessarily matter.
No, but you're ugly.
that's what it is.
Right? No, your face.
I'm rubber, you're glue, right? Yeah, a little bit. But the point is, as one side gets more extreme, the other side's reactions become more extreme. And I think the only way to quell some of that is the video that we started this whole thing with. The only way to quell some of that, and I know it's an old adage we keep coming back to in Real News, but I think we keep coming back to it because of how genuinely effective it is. Of reaching out to someone in compassion, regardless of all this nonsense you're seeing, and understanding that the smallest percentage of the population are the ones that are actually enacting some of this stuff right now. Right? That the vast majority of us want to be reasonable. We desire resolution. That we seek after some type of restoration with our fellow man, with our brothers, with our sisters. We don't want to see this type of violence go down. And especially when everyone has just lost the plot as to any purpose or motivation behind it. This is not what we're about. This is not what we're designed to be or designed to do. And there's this inherent yearning in every single one of us to get back to that stance. I think that's why that video was so effective in impacting on me. Yes, it was praying for someone, but what I'm really pitching here is that compassionate outreach of understanding where somebody else is and cutting through this trash right now. That is going to be the solution, because the further each side pushes communism, fascism, the worse it's going to get. And then it's a big circle and it all devolves onto itself, right? But somewhere in the middle there, the way to get through all that stuff, I do believe, is servant mentality, serve for somebody else, altruism, right? Treating your neighbors you would want to be treated. Hi, my name is Mr. Henry, David Sean Thompson, best friend in the world, doing this since day one. We're Real News, by the way. Real friends is what we make here, building a real community. That's why we do what we do. We're signing off for today, a little bit late today, but I had some stuff we needed to say. We'll be back on tomorrow doing it big. Love y'all.